Welcome back, everyone. So, I made this video a few months ago about drawing backgrounds, and I think I left a lot of things out, and some things that were honestly unclear. I mentioned in my last video that you have to draw a background in a certain way with the horizon line in the middle. Although you can definitely still do that, but I found that this technique is not as versatile anymore. You see, this drawing I did for my last video can only be used in one setting, so where my story is now, I can no longer use it, which is a big waste of background. I wanted a system that can easily make a unique background on the fly, because locations change all the time. So, how do we do that? How do we draw backgrounds in the most efficient way? After a few weeks of trial and error, and honestly a lot of sleepless nights, I figured out that the best way to do it is through modular assets. Let me show you what I mean. This is where I collect all the background elements that I've created so far. I put them all into this one massive Photoshop file. Let me give you a bit of a tour. Over here, I have my building assets, all the buildings that I've used so far that I can reuse and redraw over and over again. And same here with the mountains, the trees, and I even got a few textures. I've talked about this a little bit on my last video, but right now it's grown in size and it's still growing. Because of this, I was able to make new backgrounds that was more unique every time the location changes. For the flora, I usually use brushes. I found this brush pack online. I'll link it in the description, but it helped me speed up the process when it comes to drawing plants. I know it's a bit of a cheat, but hey, I'm using digital. I'm gonna use all the exploits that I can get. When you use them together, you get something like this. Hey, just a quick stop. If you're enjoying this video and if you learned something from it so far, a quick like and subscribe would be greatly appreciated. It goes a long way, guys. And I make videos like this at least once a week, from illustrations to manga, or even world building and storytelling. If you'd like to join my Discord server, the link is down in the description below. I'll see you there, guys. Alright, let's go back to the video. That's not to say that you can't draw background manually. I definitely still do that quite a bit. But when you do, try cutting those elements to add to your collection. If you just keep drawing, eventually you'll reach a point where you have a massive asset pool where you can just create backgrounds on the fly. In my example, I drew multiple types of mountains just to avoid repetition, because if you're just going to copy paste the same mountain every time, it's going to look very cheap and lazy. And I did this with everything. You can even try tracing your drawings to get something a lot more unique. Maybe change that window, or add a balcony, or change the shape of the roof, add a porch, and suddenly you have a new building that looks completely unique. I'll demonstrate this in real time. Once you've got your foreground, which would be the characters in this page, I then create a mask for the foreground using a solid fill layer. I colored it gray at first. This is so that I can easily see the mask. And then, using the magic wand, I erase the gray fill like this. This creates a visible outline for the characters. Once I have my mask, I convert the color to white. I do the same for the background. Create another solid fill layer behind the one that we just did. This time, erase the fill that's outside the panels. I'm going to convert the mask back to gray just so that you can see what they look like. Now, we have a foreground mask and a background mask. The mask prevents the drawing from overlapping with the foreground. Neat, yeah? After that, it's just about copy-pasting the appropriate backgrounds behind the foreground mask, like this. One thing you gotta keep in mind is you have to put your background assets above the background mask. So your setup would look like this. And then just right click on the background asset above the mask and click on create clipping mask. And the asset should stick to that white fill we created earlier. For my keybinds, I have Ctrl R as a shortcut for creating and releasing a clipping mask. Then, if the scene needs it, I'll just add some textures using the brush that I mentioned earlier. After that, I add halftones to really sell the scene. Of course, some of my assets don't work on every panel. Some of them needs to be angled. I'll do this process again on a different page. Using modular assets, I'm just copying and pasting this building to create the background for these scenes. This took me around 5 to 6 minutes to create backgrounds for these two panels, and eventually I ended up with something like this. Notice that I also added gray tones using halftones for the roof and the sky too. Okay, so I recorded this part a few days later and I caught the flu, so I apologize in advance for my voice. It sounds very sad. For indoor backgrounds, I have a process for that too. That's where my textures comes in, these things. So first, I have to figure out the angles of the panels based on the character's pose. Then I lay out a very simple guide to help me figure out how the walls, the ceilings, the grounds are positioned. Next, I just figure out what materials those things are. In this case, I'm using wood. So to the left, we see a wall, and this thing is in perspective. So I'm going to transform and use the perspective tool to put it in an angle. And just keep doing this until you end up with something like this. Most of the details on the left I drew manually, and I did not utilize the background pack that I have. Remember, the goal is not to get rid of the process of drawing backgrounds, it's just to make it a lot easier. Using gray tones, I'm going to add different types of shades for the background just to make everything a lot clearer. I added a haze to enhance the atmosphere. And just to take it even further, I added people. So I'm going to do that again, this time in real time, and using a more manga-centric art style, only using black and white. As you can see, I treat the background for this panel as if it was just a texture. Using the geometry of the room, along with the distort and perspective tool when transforming the wood texture, I can manipulate these shapes to match the perspective of the room. This way, I can easily make the wall and the roof of the room without much effort. After that, it's just about detailing, adding stuff that you would normally see in the room that you're creating. A cabinet, maybe a door, some railings, all that good stuff. You'll also see me render the room too, using halftones to create the illusion of gray. Again, I will link my brushes in the description down below. You can probably make more detailed, more dynamic backgrounds when you draw it manually. This trick really only applies to those panels that doesn't really have the background as its focus. Anyways, this was just a short follow-up for that video I made a few months ago. If you liked this video, like and subscribe, and I'll see you all on the next one. Bye-bye you!